You're either on the bus or you're off the bus.
Hello and welcome aboard episode 7 of Ridin the Bus, the official Iowa Wild podcast presented by Explore Minnesota is on the way. Ben Gislason, Joey Goldstein, looking forward to episode 7 in a big way. If you read the introduction, if you read the title, you obviously realized it's a big guest. We promoted it a bit last week. You tweeted about it a little bit too. We tried to maybe lead the horse to water a little bit.
Didn't pick up the steam that we thought it was going to. I thought it was really clever, and they don't always land. That one did not land.
We did land Bill Guerin, though, general manager of the Minnesota Wild and a 4-time Stanley Cup champion, whether it be as a player or as an executive. Obviously, earnestly and vigorously working for that 5th cup now is Bill. But a great chat with Bill. We're going to get there quickly. We don't have a lot of tenure tidbits to get to. We don't have a ton to talk about, but let's not just completely run ourselves over here. Let's catch up a little bit on the week that was, and as we get ready for Bill Guerin, what's on your mind?
It's a busy time right now. It's a busy time right now. You know, we talked about the schedule being out, and with that, it's kind of pedal to the floor, and it's full speed ahead looking into the season. So, working diligently on this promo schedule that we're hoping to be able to. And
you're about to say digitally and diligently.
Yep.
Yes.
Working hard to get a fun promo schedule built out, a lot of fun theme nights and giveaways and things like that. We got a few fun ideas in the works, hoping to be able to release that and unveil that in the next couple weeks here, and hopefully be able to talk about it a little bit more in depth as we get going. But we know a couple things for sure. Obviously, opening night, we know our school day game's going to be back. Pink in the Rink will have back, all the staples that everybody's used to, and hopefully a couple new ones that get people excited. So stay tuned for that. That's kind of been the thing that's taking up a lot of my time lately.
Can you drop us any breadcrumbs of anything new? I know you don't want to sell the farm here, but can you lead us down a breadcrumb trail towards kind of like you were trying to do on that tweet that you did, without telling us too much, but telling us a little bit about what we could be excited about? Because people may or may not know I'm as much in the dark on some of these things as some of our fans are. So I'd be curious.
Everybody's in the dark. Honestly, nobody really on our staff has any clue kind of what's being planned. I'm trying to keep
veiled in secrecy.
Try to keep it a bit of a surprise as long as I can. I'm trying to think like what I can tease for certain. I can tell you some of the things that we might be trying to work on involve some eating food in large quantities.
Okay. Not quite breadcrumbs. That's full slices of bread.
Yeah, that's
basically,
full slices of something.
If we're really playing on the analogy game there.
We might, we might throw some cute, cuddly things onto the ice potentially at some point during the year.
That's a big breadcrumb. That's going to really gain some speculation.
We might. And we might do something special for all our kids club members and some kids. Do some fun things with them. What else? The giveaway side of things. A lot of practical items. Things that have more everyday use. Obviously, bobbleheads are a thing. Can't really unveil who those are, but I think people are going to be really happy about those for sure. Once those
some creative looks to the bobbleheads too, I think, right?
Yeah, I think one's a pretty standard, player image. The other one's a little bit more creative. I think if you paid attention last year during the season, and it's a pretty distinct look, this bobblehead that we're going with. So it's different. This person's not going to be in a uniform, but I guess it's a uniform in its own right. It's just not a hockey uniform.
Yeah.
So.
All right. That was good. I appreciate
hopefully that helps a little bit.
I probably behind the curtain.
Some bigger crumbs, some smaller crumbs. I don't know. Use your imagination. Nothing is finalized yet. These are just all hopes and plans. So we'll see what comes to fruition here over the next week and a half, and we'll roll it out and let everybody know.
From crumbs to tidbits, let's get to our 10-year tidbits presented by Explore Minnesota. From gorgeous city lakes to the pristine boundary waters, it's easy to see how Minnesotans have perfected the art of enjoying lake life. Rent a pontoon, grab a floaty, swim from the beach, or paddle for hours. When it comes to summer fun, you'll find it at exploreminnesota.com. We're going to get to Bill Guerin quickly, but we do have news that came out yesterday. Matt Murphy, defenseman, signs a deal with the Iowa Wild here, a two-way deal. Big defenseman, had a lot of experience throughout the American League last year, also in the ECHL. He made his way around a bit in a few different loan opportunities, a few different PTO opportunities that he had in the American Hockey League. But we are starting to see this team taking shape here now. We're starting to be able to look at what a depth chart might look like a little bit with some of the names now, and it just continues to look like more and more of a different-looking team. We're seeing players that we weren't sure whether we'd see them again sign elsewhere. No more Keaton Thompson. He signs in Milwaukee. We were talking this morning, Bryce Gervais signs overseas. So those were a few of the guys that were still left on the table that I think we were all wondering, maybe we'll see him, maybe we won't. Instead, we're seeing Matt Murphy, another player listed, another player coming in who's probably more of an ECHL pedigree player, but still trying to make his way into the American Hockey League, which to me is exciting. To me is a player that is hungry and wants to try to continue to prove that they belong at the next level. And I always like size in the back end too.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it before we started recording. It kind of reminds you of a Bryce Gervais in a way, where he's maybe a little bit older than some of these other ECHL guys. But one thing that stood out to me when we were looking up, some information about him was he's got a winning pedigree. He won in the Q. He won a Memorial Cup. He's won a Kelly Cup. He went to university in Canada, won a youth sports championship. So the guy knows how to win, and that's what Mike and Tim and Bill are looking for with people in this organization. They want guys who have that background. So when it matters, when games are you're in those crucial moments, you got guys who aren't fazed by the moment, and he's somebody who's certainly seems like he's not going to be fazed by a big moment.
And 27 years of age, like you mentioned, not just your typical spry AHL, ECHL deal type player. Gervais is a great connection there, a great analogy. He could very well be that type, and I know Bryce was a very important person in the room in the role that he played, and perhaps Matt will be the next coming of that, and I'm sure there'll be other players that take those reins as well.
I saw Minnesota tweeted about it the other day, but the World Junior Tournament starts up.
Oh, thank you for stopping me on that.
I think that starts up next week, next Tuesday.
August 9th,
the 9th, yeah, so next week. A lot of prospects in the Wild organization playing in this tournament, and a good amount of guys that we may end up seeing here in Iowa. Jesper Wallstedt is playing for Sweden. Damon Hunt, O'Rourke, these are all guys who are playing for Canada. There's Brock Faber, Jack Peart are playing for USA. There's some guys playing for the Czech team. So
spot checks in Czech.
Yep. So there's a lot of Wild prospects playing in this tournament, which usually is held in the winter, but because of COVID, this past year they couldn't have it, so they pushed it to August. So it's always a really fun tournament to watch. I enjoy it from watching from start to finish. Those guys, I mean, we've talked a little bit about it with some of our guests when they've come on who have had the opportunity to play in this tournament, and it's something that creates lifelong memories for them, lifelong friendships, but it's always fun seeing guys compete on the world stage for your country. So I'm excited to see how those guys, just in general, how the tournament shakes out, but how our prospects do as well.
Meaningful hockey, too, in August. Not something that we are all at all accustomed to normally seeing. And obviously for the players that were at the World Junior that got it postponed, or I think at the time it might have even been canceled. I forget what the official naming of what happened was, but it was obviously a letdown. I remember talking to Ryan O'Rourke about this letdown because he was at the World Junior that was supposed to happen this past winter. But for us fans, exciting to have something that we can watch that is meaningful. I think we joked about it a few episodes ago, where you're in the doldrums and all we could think of was home run derby. So that was that was definitely something to see coming up.
Do you think it? Obviously, having it usually in January, it's the middle of their season. That's one thing. Do you think this is at a benefit to these young guys who they're playing in August, which in just a couple weeks you're rolling into your rookie camps and your training camps in September? Does this benefit them, you think, to get some true game action right off the bat? You think it gives them a leg up maybe going into training camp in September as opposed to not having this tournament in August typically?
I think from that viewpoint it does, but I would also look at it as this is an opportunity for so many of these players. They're going to be playing in front of especially having it being in August, they're going to be playing in front of every set of important eyeballs you could play in front of, where it still is massively important in when it happens in January, but obviously teams are busier with other things going on. Not that scouting staffs aren't, but I'd imagine you could potentially see more upper echelon general managers, front office executives that will go to this in August as opposed to in the middle of their respective seasons in the National Hockey League. And I would also say that January, those guys are in the best shape of the season.
Yeah.
They're going to have to work a little bit harder to be in shape, to be in tip-top performance shape for an August series where they've been on the lake for 2 months. Not that these guys obviously aren't training immensely hard, but
it's not the same as when you're in season.
And you talk to anybody about that, and they'll all tell you the same thing. It's almost impossible to find that shape that you get to when you're in January, because you've been practicing, just about close to daily for let's see, October, November, December. I mean, that's almost 4 months you've been really going at it. You've been playing most weekends for those amateur players that are playing a pretty heavy weekend schedule. So I think it kind of depends on how you look at it. There will be some benefits, I think, like you mentioned. They might come into training camp in better shape because they have been pressing as hard as they've been pressing to prepare for this tournament. But at the same time, will they all feel like this is their best, they're their best of the best ability, they're at the best of the best shape? Maybe not.
If there's probably, looking at the Wild prospects, right, if there's one person who this is probably going to benefit the most, it's probably Jesper Wallstedt, because this tournament's taking place in Canada, so you're not playing on that large European surface that he's used to. You're already going to be playing on that smaller surface, which is, for a goalie, we've talked about it before, that's a big thing, getting adjusted to that smaller surface. So any experience he can get playing on the smaller sheet that we play on in North America is a benefit to him. So maybe that comes in and helps him get a little bit more acclimated a little bit sooner than what he normally would have if he was just coming in for camp in September.
The man who drafted Jesper Wallstedt, Bill Guerin. We're about to hear from him. Our fans are about to hear from him. Final thoughts on period one, remembering that interview that was just so terrific. What jumped out at you that you think our fans are really going to enjoy?
And there's a couple A+ stories in this thing, which if you saw the teaser, it's the story of him at the airport, hopping on the loudspeaker and pretending that he was on the phone with his mom in like a quiet airport. I think it was in Montreal. Is just what a story. I mean, the confidence to be able to do something like that is unbelievable. But I think, we knew he was going to be a good storyteller coming in. I think the biggest thing is the takeaways from him on the general management side and kind of the adjustment and what has made him successful, people we took advice from, and kind of some advice that he has for people who ask similar questions, how to get involved in something like that, why scouting is so important. Those are all things that kind of stood out for me listening to him.
As a whole, too, just really genuine. And I've heard that from people who deal with them a lot more normally than we do, which is rarely to ever. I've heard that, but he showed that, and he gave us just under an hour, I think he did, and you brought up Worcester, and all of a sudden his ears perked up, and he was asking you questions about Worcester. It was really raw when we were talking about him playing on Long Island and how it was tough there and how he struggled with that. He didn't pull any punches. He didn't puff his chest up and say, "Oh, it was fine." And no, he was like, it was really hard.
Yeah, he was honest and raw. And
and that's just for a guy like that to give us that much time and to come on. It showcases, and we talk about it at the end of the podcast or the end of the interview with him, just how much he does value the American Hockey League, and whether that's the players or two simpleton podcasters. He does value this place, and he values the people that work here and that play here. So I couldn't have had a better time with him, and I know our fans will think the same. So without any further ado, it's time to hear from about as much of a boss as you can get, the Minnesota Wild organization, the general manager of the Minnesota Wild, Bill Guerin. The bus is leaving the station, and we picked up a very special guest with us here for episode number 7. We're joined by Bill Guerin, general manager of the Minnesota Wild, and also has a lot of cup rings to go along with that, too, as a player and as a front office executive. Bill, looking forward to this. We've been looking forward to it all week. Thanks so much for parking some time with us here.
Yeah, no problem. It's my pleasure to be on, and I've been looking forward to it.
Well, the question we start with every guest is, we want a good bus story, and I know as a 5th overall pick, someone who probably didn't spend a lot of time on the bus in the American League. I know you had a small stint with Utica, but a good bus story. When you think about, it could be a good plane story of to help you out because you might have more options. You might have more options there than you do on the bus. But anything that jumps out that you can share with our listeners.
Honestly, oh God, these are the toughest questions because you get put on the spot, and there's so many. You just can't pinpoint one, but like you said, I don't pretend to have spent a ton of time in the American Hockey League. I think I played 44 games, but the time I did spend there was critical to my success in the NHL. And I do remember arriving. I do remember. So it's kind of funny, like you said, I was a high pick. When I turned pro, it was actually pretty funny because Lou Lamoriello came. I was at home at my house in Wilbraham, Massachusetts. The closest airport was Bradley International Airport, which is Hartford. So Lou Lamoriello flew in on Dr. McMullen's plane, who Dr. McMullen owned the Devils at the time. And Lou had got a room at the Sheraton Hotel connected to Bradley. And I went there with my father, my best friend, and my uncle, and I signed my first pro contract. And I didn't even know people had private planes back then. I didn't even know you could do that. So Lou said, "Yeah, we're going to use Dr. McMullen's plane to go back." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, great. Like, hey, New Jersey, here I come." Yeah, well, he took a hard left and went up to Utica, dropped me off. He said, "Good luck, kid." Turned around and went back to New Jersey without me. And then I kicked off my my American Hockey League career the next morning. But I look back on those days very fondly, still very close with a lot of the guys that I played with, and I learned a lot. And it was, it was something that impacted me very, very hard. And I believe in the American Hockey League and what it does for young players.
Talking about the American Hockey League, I mean, how far have you seen development come since when you played to really where it is now? Obviously, it's second best league in the world. There's a vast more teams than what you were in the league when you were playing. So, what are your thoughts on the direction that the league's headed, what it's doing for young players, and how it's helping grow the game around the country?
Well, I think that's really become the identity of the American Hockey League, is that it is a development league for the NHL. And I think more than ever now, the league, the players have really wrapped their arms around that identity and responsibility. And there is no better place for kids to develop than the American Hockey League. And it's come so far. You see all the money that NHL teams put into it, private owners put into it. That's just how important it is. And, as much of it as a development league it's always critical to have great veterans around your young players. And those guys can't be forgotten. They're so important to the culture of your team. How your young players come in and start learning right away about the pro life. It's just, those guys are critical.
We're going to get to working, I'm sure, in tandem with Mike Murray about being the architect of an American Hockey League team here later on. We do want to stick on the player side here for a bit, Bill. And as you mentioned, didn't spend long in the American Hockey League before you were up with the Devils and making big waves with the Devils. Third season in the NHL, a Stanley Cup, one of the 4 you've got up over your left shoulder there that you celebrate. You had to wait 13 more seasons to do it again with Pittsburgh. And I'm curious, when you think about those two teams, could you give us 3 of maybe the main characteristics that those teams shared? Is there a Stanley Cup formula that you could help garner from those 2 experiences?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think the first one is that it was all about the team. It wasn't about any individual success. Second of all, the sacrifice that players make during the playoffs and to get to be Stanley Cup champions is incredible. And, I guess the third was the execution of it. And you had, coaches that executed a game plan, players that followed that out, and the ability to do that in, under extreme pressure. And, those two teams had definitely had those three things in common.
It's very evident, Bill, watching from afar down here, being a Minnesotan and seeing your iteration of GMing the Minnesota Wild, a large personality, extremely black and white, which is refreshing as a Minnesotan because we're not all that used to that. You've probably learned the passive aggressiveness that is being in Minnesota. It's very real. So to have someone like yourself come in and it's really been a breath of fresh air in a lot of ways. And I've heard a story that helps showcase that personality. It was your second year in New Jersey. You were in Montreal. So oftentimes guys in their second years, they might stay to the walls a little more. They might not get in front of the team as much. You found an open concourse with an open PA microphone waiting for a charter out of Montreal with the Devils. And I'd love for you to regale us on that story because I've heard it's a great one.
Where did you hear that?
A good journalist will never reveal his source.
Wow,
but I have been told that you owe this man a lot of thanks for some backdoor tap-ins.
Oh my God! It was we had played in Montreal, and we had to go through the terminal to get to our chartered plane. And I mean, of course, we won the game, and it was that's the only way you can do this. But it was late at night, so most of the airport was basically closed, and I picked up the phone that was like the PA announcing phone, and I did a mock phone call back home to my mom, and I was complaining about everything and making fun of guys and saying I was the best one on the team, but nobody understands that. Just stupid stuff like that. I can't believe you found that out. That's great. You got good sources.
I tried to. I was lucky that they got back to me when I reached out. The New Jersey Devils, an organization that obviously built who you were as a player. What do you think maybe surprised you most about making the jump from 40-some games in the American League to the National Hockey League? And what do you think allowed you to jump in so quickly, not only to have success on the ice, but clearly if you're grabbing microphones and having fun like that at airports, off the ice too within the room?
Yeah, well, I do think my time in the American League was good because I was confident. It got to a point where I was playing real well. I was, producing a lot of points. I felt really good about myself. And I think Lou Lamoriello was ahead of his time in making, most young players go down and play there. The only guy that I can remember that didn't play in the American Hockey League was Scott Niedermayer. And, Scotty was he was just special. And he didn't need to. But I think the timing of it all, where they brought me up at the right time on a high, feeling confident where I knew I could play was really important. And then taking the opportunity that was in front of me. And, I think a big mistake that kids make today are they pigeonhole themselves in a certain role. Well, I'm a top six forward, or I'm a middle six forward, or I'm a top line guy. It's really hard to score your way into the National Hockey League, and you better be really, really good if you're going to do that. And you know what? I saw an open spot. It was, at the start, it was fourth line right wing. I had to provide energy and physical play and, maybe get in the odd fight. And that's what I did. I was an energy guy, and I did that for a year, and then moved up to the third line. I played there for 5 years. So I wasn't making it on my terms. I was making it with the opportunity that was in front of me. And you got to bend a little bit. See, I'm not just black and white. I can bend a little bit.
After New Jersey, the travel bags get packed quite a bit for a few years. I know you've joked about this on some other podcasts. You've been on Edmonton, Boston, Dallas, St. Louis, New Jersey, or St. Louis, and then San Jose. A few quick stops there, finally into Long Island. And I do want to talk about Long Island because we do have a connection there. Richard Shaky Krause as well, the equipment manager with the Islanders while you were there. But some of the names that you got to play with on the way there, names like Mike Modano, Joe Thornton, Sidney Crosby, when you finished in Pittsburgh, come to mind. But I'm curious, Bill, there were a lot of other players you played with too, aside from just those stars. Anybody that comes to mind where you think they didn't get the praise, the aplomb that like Sidney Crosby or Mike Modano gets, where you went, this guy is just a fantastic, fantastic hockey player that didn't receive as much attention as maybe some of these other players you played with along the way did?
Oh my God, there's so many. There's so many. I mean, Dougie Waite. You didn't mention Dougie Waite. He was my favorite guy to play with, and Keith Tkachuk. I was so lucky to have played with some amazing players along the way that you can never do it alone. And even the guys that you just learn from, like, and they don't always have to be the superstars. I guess the one guy that really comes to mind that is, his number is actually retired in Dallas, but just is Yuri Leitnin. And he's the guy that everybody wanted to play with. He could, he could produce at a good rate, but he never gave up his defensive responsibilities. His wall play was great. He was blocking shots, always in great position. He was just kind of like that Swiss Army knife type guy. And, he only played in Dallas. So I don't think a lot of the league really knew how good he was. But that's the guy that really comes to mind. He's a special player.
Looking at all those stops along the way, I mean, my biggest question is which city was your favorite to play in, and why was it Boston?
They were all great. Like I tell everybody, there are good things and bad things about playing anywhere. And, no place is perfect, and no place is all that bad. And the one thing that I guess I'll give myself credit for, and I'll especially give my wife and kids credit for, is that when we went someplace new, we were all in. We were never in there and just kind of dipping the toe in. I'm sorting them out now. Every kid's got home and away jerseys. They've got the hats. They've got the sweatshirts. They're, all ready to go. It didn't matter. We're all in. When we lived in St. Louis and the Cards won the World Series, we were at the games. It's just things like that. When we're in Boston, we were going to Red Sox games and Celtics games, and there's it was tough, but I have so many friends, so many great experiences that anywhere I go now, there's kind of like a connection. And even for my kids, they had to experience new schools and new soccer teams, new hockey teams, and which was really tough at that time. But now as, adults, they can really handle themselves in any social situation. So it was hard at the time. And you never want to play in 8 teams. That's a lot, but there was kind of a silver lining to it.
And going back into, and when you were in Boston, you spent some time with a young Joe Thornton there. Were able to reconnect with him a little bit later in his career when you were in San Jose. This is a guy who everybody talks about. He's a character larger than life. Lots of Joe Thornton stories. Is there one that maybe comes to mind that you can share just to kind of, personify the type of person that he is?
Yeah, no, I mean, he's just a fun-loving guy. Loves life. I mean, loved being at the rink every day. And I was with him when he was really young, so he was just starting to click. And I left, when I left for Dallas, I remember being on the ice. I think we were playing San Jose. Yeah, exactly. We were playing San Jose, and I forget who the player was, but came up to me and said, "Hey, we just traded for your buddy in Boston." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, we just traded for Joe Thornton." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Why the hell would they do that?" It was crazy. The guys from San Jose were so mad they trashed the locker room on the way out. They were pissed. But it was, no, I mean, a lot of good memories with him. And I mean, the player that he turned into was, I mean, he was incredible.
Yeah, I was in San Jose for a bit before coming to the Wild organization, and he's just somebody who everybody just admired from, top to bottom. Didn't matter if you were working directly within the hockey ops side of the business or you were, in the accounting side of the business. Everybody loved Jumbo. He's the best.
Yeah, he is. He's a really good guy, and he just treats everybody the same. That's I think one of the things that gets lost nowadays is, just being humble and just treating people well, and that's what he always did.
When you were in Long Island, I alluded to it earlier, Richard Shaky Krause, we're talking to a great storyteller here in Bill Guerin. Richard Shaky Krause, that guy can tell a story incredibly. Any stories that, when you think about your time back in Long Island, does Shaky come up in any of those stories? Are there any you can share with us that we can give him some grief on later on down the road?
Yeah, of course there are. But I don't know if you guys know this, but Shaky and I go back to Utica.
I didn't know that.
Shaky was he was just getting started, and he was one of our equipment guys in Utica. So we go back to day one, and then 13 years later, we get reunited in Long Island, and we just had a blast there. Like after a game, we weren't very good, so it was kind of a struggle. But after games, I'd always go back to the equipment room, and Shaky'd be sharpening skates, and I'd go grab a Bud Light and a slice of Umberto's pizza and just sit there and just kind of shoot the shit with him to unwind a little bit. But Shaky's been a good friend for a long time, and I don't know how it started, but Shaky started calling me Mr. Belvedere way back when. So you guys are probably too young for the Mr. Belvedere show, but there's this little kid in it called Wesley. So anytime I see Shaky, he always says, "How you doing, Mr. Belvedere?" And I always say, "I'm doing pretty good, Wesley. How are you?" And this has been going on for 25 years now.
I did not know it was that long. That's fantastic.
It's also such a Shaky thing to come up with nicknames on the spot. He's done it for me, and I don't know where it came from.
Yep.
So
I think we both. Mine was the Greenhorn for my first year. He's a big fan of the Deadliest Catch show. So when I was a rookie, I was the Greenhorn. He made me a stall tag, put that up behind my desk. Yeah,
I've become Joey Diamond, and I don't know. He's always got
Shaky one. Shaky and I have shared many Bud Lights together over the years. He's a good man.
And a tremendous human being. And Bill, I wanted to also ask, you brought up some lean years in Long Island. I think I was doing some homework on that, and I think your first year you were there were 3 players that played 30 or more games that had a plus-minus rating that was over even. Obviously it was a tough year. I did hear, though, hockey players find a way to make fun of whatever the situation is, right, and make light of it and enjoy it. There was a certain Island Girl song that became popular within the group. What can you tell us about what was that song and what was the usage of it?
Well, it was Elton John, Island Girl, and you know how it goes, Island Girls, and anytime, I think it was Mike Sillinger that started. It was pretty funny. Anytime something would go wrong, in years like that, it seems everything goes wrong. All the guys would just start saying Islanders, and it was a long year. It was, it was totally rebuilding. It was a grind. I had a hard time. It was not the best, but hey, look, you always gotta, if you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at?
Did you learn anything about yourself as a player at that time, being a captain of a team like that? What did it teach you about Bill Guerin? What did it teach Bill Guerin about Bill Guerin?
To be quite honest with you, I wasn't built for the rebuild. I just wasn't. I was coming to the end of my career, and I'm being totally honest. I had a really hard time with it, and I just wanted to win, and I wasn't prepared for. I really enjoyed being the captain. It was a huge honor, but I wanted to win again, and I just wasn't prepared for that ending to my career. I wanted to go out on a higher note than that.
Well, and the fairy tale ending certainly came. 2009, you get on that stacked Penguins team, were a huge part of it. The years you spent there, that cup, I'm sure you've been asked it, compared to the first one, was it sweeter because there was the baggage behind it? There was the years in Long Island. There was the moving around that you and your family had to do. I'm sure each had reasons why they were very, very special to you. But when you compare them, what stands out to you about '09 compared to the earlier one in New Jersey?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, the one in '95, I was 24 years old, like I said, third year in the league, and you win. You're like, yeah, all right, we're going to do this, every year, every other year at the worst. But then it takes you, 13, 14 years, and you don't get a sniff. And, I was on some pretty good teams too. And it just, it was the first one we didn't, Karen and I weren't even married. Now, we were married, we had 4 kids. We had talked about it. They had seen pictures, they had heard us talking about it. And it kind of made everything worthwhile. And that trade to Pittsburgh itself just totally rejuvenated me. The cup was icing on top, and it just, I was so lucky to have gone there and experienced that. And then, Pittsburgh was so great for me, and that organization and that city was unbelievable to me. And it was a great, I think 10 years I spent there. And it was awesome.
You've brought up your kids a few times. I know your son Liam played in the North American Hockey League. I'm a North American League alum, so I was proud to see him come out of that league. Now he's going to be playing in the MIAC with Hamlin, right under your nose there at Tria Rink. So that'll be a fun experience, I'm sure, to have him so close to home, especially considering he was in New Mexico previously.
No, absolutely.
But I'm curious, what's Bill Guerin like as a hockey dad?
I think I'm a pretty good hockey dad. I've gotten better over the years. Like when I pull back, I wasn't a great coach for my son. Like I coached him for 2 seasons, and after the second season, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. Our favorite time was in the car, and we would, crank classic rock, and we would, every ride we would sing Bohemian Rhapsody, start to finish. And that was, kind of like our goofy thing. And we'd have the tunes going the whole time. We'd take road trips. And as I was coaching, I would have to try to push him. He'd get mad at me. I'd get mad at him. Our car rides turned to junk. And I quit. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I just, I'm going to sit in the stands and let him have his fun on the ice. And so I got better as time went on, and we've got a really good relationship, and he went to boarding school for 3 years too. So we really haven't had him around for 5 years. So to have him going to Hamlin, nobody's happier than my wife, but I'm right behind.
You talk about sitting in the car listening to classic rock. Give us your top 5 classic rock bands of all time.
Oh boy, classic rock bands of all time. Well, I'm a huge Springsteen fan. I guess he would be considered classic rock now, but I love Springsteen. Love the Beatles. My God, I was a big metal guy back in the '80s, so I love Motley Crue. I Led Zeppelin. Oh my God, there's so many. Like, you guys stump me with these questions. There's so many.
It's a big songbook to pick from.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. I honestly, there's just so many. But I love music. I love. I've got a morning playlist that I play most mornings on my way into work, and it's got everything from, it's got Motley Crue, Bruce Springsteen, Little River Band,
little LRB.
Little LRB.
Yeah.
It's got, just everything. Yeah, Boston. It's just I've got Boston's another group. I love Boston. They're awesome. That's like to start my day that way. A little country, Travis Tritt, Brooks and Dunn.
Nice.
Music's a good way to start the day.
Yeah, it sure is. Bill, I want to talk a little GMing. I want to get you away from the playing side and more into the front office side now. You're someone that talks at length about, and you talked about earlier with us, paying your dues in the process, and you're not somebody that jumped out of a fabulous NHL career directly into a GM chair. You paid your dues. You started as a development coach in Pittsburgh with the Penguins, worked your way into the assistant GM role, and then took over as general manager of Wilkes-Barre Scranton. What specific lessons do you think you pulled from that time and that you think you maybe still employ today now that you do have control over the Minnesota Wild?
Well, I think the work part of it. I always tell everybody, kind of ask me for advice, like, how'd you do it, or what is it? I said, well, the foundation to this job, to all these jobs, is scouting. And you can't have success without getting out there and kind of pounding the pavement and seeing the players. You need to know the players. Ray Shiro, who works with us in Minnesota now, gave me I don't know if it was advice or something that he believed in, and I believe in it too, because I went through it. He said, former players scare me because they want a paycheck, a title, and an office, and they don't want to work. And that was like one of the first things he said to me. So I said, okay, I'm in a different realm. So I had to go through, I remember calling Tommy Fitzgerald. I was going to meet him out here in Minnesota to go scouting up in Duluth. I said, buddy, who's making our flights? And he's like, oh boy. He goes, you are, buddy. I'm like, oh crap. So just even stuff like that, making your flights, renting your car, not just a flight, you might have to make a connection because it's cheaper and you got to save money for the organization. Rent your car, get your hotel, figure out where you're going. The hardest thing is trying to get into some of these rinks, for God's sakes, what back door to use and all these things. But I loved it. And it was a great job, and player development is probably the most sought after job in hockey. And I think for good reason, because you have such a positive impact, or a direct impact on young players, and really help them make it to the NHL.
I'm curious, too, if temperament was at all something that you've learned, because I did hear early on in the player development side, with Wilkes-Barre Scranton, there was a dust-up that involved you being ejected from the game, from the bench. I did hear this story. What can you tell us about what led to this incident?
Oh, man. Well, I was trying to help a player out. I was on the bench. So during player development, I would a lot of times, John Hines was the head coach. Elaine Nazardine was the assistant coach. And I would go down and be on the bench for the third period in a lot of games. We were in Springfield, my hometown, and I was helping Zach Sill with something, because Zach was a gritty, tough kid, and he just wasn't really playing the role that he needed to in order to make it. So Brian Gibbons was in front of the Springfield net, and he was getting worked over. Like, he was getting the crap beat out of him in front of the net, and he turned around and gave the guy one whack, and they called Brian Gibbons. So I told Siller, I was like, Siller, this is how you handle this situation, and blah blah blah. So Zach went out there and he started talking to the guy that was working over Gibbons, and the ref came over and yelled at Zach Sill. So I started yelling at the ref, and he didn't take any grief from me. He just turned around and said, "You're out of here." And I think it put us down. It put us down 5-on-3. And
one strike though.
Honestly,
no warning.
No warning.
That is the tightest bench in the world, and I was at the far end, so I had to squeeze past the other two coaches to get to the dressing room.
Just the squeeze of shame on the way off.
They weren't making any room for me, and they were so mad at me. They didn't talk to me, and thank God we won the game in a shootout. but yeah, that was a bad night.
If you haven't asked or know this story, you should ask. Matt Hendricks had a similar experience. I think it was 2 seasons ago in Chicago, but it was with the opposing bench. This happened it was a Tri-Pond Community Center. There was a definite heated exchange between Matt Hendricks, again, player development coach, on the bench during the third period of an Iowa Wild game. So there is obviously a precedent for this in the development coach side. Obviously for players, too, that I've just come very nearly out of careers. The fire is still burning very bright at that point, too, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the balance that you have to you got to be careful with it, because, you're fresh off the ice. You still have, there are unresolved issues that you have in your, in your DNA, that your competitiveness, your fire, all that stuff. You can't just suppress that right away. I think that's why a lot of guys struggle. Like, it just doesn't stop. So I think when you get thrown into the fire and there's a confrontation, yeah, your natural instinct is to be right in the middle of it. And, yeah, I can see how that would happen to Hendy. I mean, that's what he did naturally. So it's hard. I'll tell you, like, retirement is very, very hard. And that's why I tell guys, don't take time off. Get into something, whether it be hockey or something else, because you need an outlet. There's no, you can't just go out and throw a big hit or get in a fight anymore. You get put in jail. Like, you can't, you don't get 5 minutes anymore. So you got to find another release. You got to find another avenue for all that energy and that testosterone.
Speaking of guys with fire and vigor, Cody Mccloud fits that role very, very well. He comes on as a development coach for you guys in Minnesota. Why was that such a lead pipe cinch move? Because it seemed to happen very quickly. He was done. All of a sudden, he had the logo back on, but on the development coach side.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect fit. I think it's just, Cody's going to be great. He's kind of been doing it for the last couple of years. You know how I said those older guys in the American League are critical to the culture, and he's been really driving the culture for us down there. I think because of his relationship with Hendy and Bomber, it's a natural fit. And I think, his care factor, his demeanor, all those things are going to make him, very successful at that. And he's willing to work. He can't wait to get going.
A lot of the guys that, some guys that you play with in your career, Don Sweeney, Mike Greer most recently in San Jose, and now we're talking about Cody Mccloud. A lot of these former players go on to these management roles. What is it about former players that makes them so successful, or you see so many of these guys jumping into these management positions, fresh out of their careers?
Well, I think they're competitive. I think that's the one thing. Guys are wired to work, be competitive, and they're smart. You don't have to have, an MBA or a law degree to be successful, and, Sweens happened to go to Harvard, but, I never graduated from college. And, that goes for a lot of the guys sitting in the same chair, I went, but I didn't finish. The guys are smart, and they want to work, and they want to be competitive, and they want to compete in the way that they can now for a Stanley Cup.
I do want to quickly, you brought up college. You did play college hockey. You went to Boston College. I grew up on BC hockey. I'm from Worcester, so like my dad went to BC. That's a big thing. But we always remember growing up the Bean Pot. Bean Pot is a huge deal for us to go to growing up. Now, someone who got to play in two of them, what was it like for you as a player playing in that tournament? 'Cause that's a big deal in the city.
Oh, it was awesome. It's the best college tournament in the country. I mean, it was a packed Boston Garden, which, back then, I mean, that was, in the old Garden, that was incredible. So, I mean, it was, unfortunately, it didn't win one, but the experience was unbelievable. I didn't know you're from Worcester.
Yeah. Worcester.
That's where I was born.
Ben sometimes struggles to say it, but I think a lot of people do who
Worcester.
aren't from
I got that.
So.
Yeah, my dad grew up in Worcester. So my grandparents, I grew up going to Worcester all my life, and my sister went to Holy Cross, and I grew up going to Holy Cross football games and stuff. It's a great town.
Yeah, it's hometown. Hard not to love it, so I enjoy it.
Yeah.
You were back not too recently, weren't you?
Yep, back for the I go back every year around the 4th of July. We have, big get together at our house, so we actually had a hot dog eating contest this year, which was interesting to say the least.
How many?
Oh, I only put down like 4.5. It's not easy. Like
No,
we had 10 minutes. I think I put down 4.5, but the kid who won, I think he ate like 10 or 11, which was impressive. He puked not too far after the contest ended. So, yeah.
Bill, you've been super gracious with your time. I got a couple more questions before I wanted to get to. The first one I wrote down when I knew we were going to have a chance to talk with you. I think about the story that came out this year about Steve Yzerman with the Red Wings having to drive Joe Veleno to Toronto. Obviously, strange times, but nonetheless, I'm sure you were dreaming about being a GM when you're working through Pittsburgh. You're working your way up there. You get into the chair, and anytime someone dreams of a job, you get there and there's all the greatness that comes with it, but there's also the non-glamorous side to it too. Is there one experience that you've had or one item you've had to take care of that you went, I can't believe as the GM of the Minnesota Wild, I'm having to do something like this as a GM in the National Hockey League?
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, there's stuff all the time. Like you got to pick guys up at the airport if you have to. You have to do the things that you expect everybody else to do. So, if something falls through, it's on you to get it done. Thank God I have tremendous help on a daily basis. So, a lot of my bases are covered. But no, I mean, every day it's not as glamorous as you would think, because you're responsible for everything. So if something goes wrong, that's on you. Somebody might have missed their cue or whatever, but it still comes back to you. So yeah, it's a job where you're always putting out fires. There's some great things about it. I mean, there's some amazing things about it. I think I have the best job in the world. But there's always something,
Would you say so? What are being an NHL GM? It sounds like with a lot of fires to put out, that could be the most difficult part of the job. If not, what would you say the most difficult part of the job? And then, what do you think is the easiest part of the job?
Well, there's, look, the easiest part of the job is I would guess the hockey part. Like that's the fun part. That's where you're trying to put the team together. You're working with the staff to, get ready for the draft or get ready for free agency or, get ready for the season. Like the hockey part is the easy part. That's the fun part. The part that stinks, trading players that are happy. Then even worse than that is firing people, good people that rely on the job, but you need to make a move. And then the other part that stinks is people looking for jobs, and you can't help them because you already have a full staff, and they're good at what they do. That they're just honestly looking for work, and you have to turn them away.
Speaking of trading players and making moves, if you'd allow me to speculate for a second, Bill, the one thing that I've noticed in 3 seasons going in 4 now with you in the GM chair, you seem to fiercely protect culture in the room. You will do what it takes to protect that culture in the room, no matter what waves might come out of a move that you might make, because that, to me, seems like something that it's a non-negotiable for you. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. It is. And you know what? I think the players and the coaches, everybody, the fans, the trainers, the owner, everybody deserves that. And we've worked really hard to restore a good culture in Minnesota, and I'm not gonna let that fade away. The players have worked too hard at it. The coaches have worked too hard at it. We all have, and it's a very delicate thing. So once you take your finger off, the pulse of that, you're looking for trouble. It can get away from you very quickly. So. you're either on the bus or you're off the bus.
That's right. My last one here. So we've had a couple of two-way signings. Obviously, here in Iowa, we know a bit about Brandon Baddock. He spent some time here. But for Wild fans in general, whether it's Iowa or Minnesota, these Nick Petans, Andre Schuster, Stephen Fogarty, what can Wild fans expect from these guys? What are you guys on the operations side looking for out of those three?
Well, listen, those guys are experienced players. I've watched Nick Petan play since his junior days back in Portland, so I think a lot of him. He's a guy that can produce at both levels. Fogarty, I'm not as familiar with, but I hear a lot of great things about him. Through our scouting staff, through Mike Murray. I know he's a solid two-way guy that's really going to provide some great two-way play and some leadership. And he's a good depth guy that can play NHL games for us, no problem. And Andre Schuster is a guy that I tried to sign him in Pittsburgh when he was a free agent coming out of UNO. So I go back a long way with him. And he's played, hundreds of NHL games. He's got great experience that way. He knows his role right now, and he's willing to play it. So very excited about those guys. Very excited about the team that Mike Murray's put together. He's put a lot of hard work into it, and it'll be real exciting to see what Tim Army can do with these guys.
Let's finish with that. Mike Murray, why is he the man for the job? We've got to see it firsthand, but from your perch, why is Mike Murray the guy that when obviously the opportunity was open with the passing of Tom Curvers, why was Mike Murray the guy that you came in and tabbed and said he's the architect of the Iowa Wild?
Well, I think Mike's knowledge of the league, first of all, just coming from the American Hockey League to doing this is, his feel for the game. Mike's an incredibly organized guy. He leaves no stone unturned when analyzing players or talking to the scouts, talking to the development guys. He's a very, very detailed guy, very impressive in that way. And I just know it's nice to be in my position and not have to worry about how the American team is being run. And Mike has just done a fantastic job of filling some pretty big shoes that TK left.
No, Bill, this has been fantastic. And the one thing we talk about a lot down here is we do not feel like the little sibling down in Iowa. That's from my perch, from your perch. Everybody you talk to, we're talking with our counterparts all the time in Minnesota. It really is one organization. I mean, we really feel that. I know that comes down from you and the rest of the heads up there. And this has been fantastic. Thanks so much for stopping on and hopping on the bus this year for just under an hour.
Yeah,
a lot of time, I know, in a very busy day for you. So really, thanks a million, Bill. This has been a real treat.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me on. And I'm glad you said that because that's how it should be. We're all in it together. We're all part of the Wild, and you know what you guys do in Iowa is critical to the success of the Minnesota Wild. And hey, we're all on the same team, right? So thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
A big thanks to Bill Guerin, just a tremendous chat, a tremendous guy, and has done so much already in a very short tenure with the Minnesota Wild. I heard it at the beginning of the podcast. He's really brought a breath of fresh air to Minnesota as someone who I think you would bring a breath of fresh air to Minnesota because you and Bill both have that very East Coast Boston style of talking with people. I brought it up in the interview. Minnesota's a little more, yeah, and they kind of go behind your back, go behind your back and that passive aggressiveness. But I just the genuine nature that he brings to everything he does is just so it's terrific. And so a huge thanks to Bill and also to Aaron Sickman, the PR director for the Minnesota Wild, for getting that lined up for us too.
Yeah, he's a no BS kind of guy. He's very straightforward, and we talked about him and having that a specific culture that he's looking for. This is a guy who's won as a player, as an exec. He knows what it takes. He knows what that build-up needs to be in the locker room, and that's what he's looking for. And you brought it up with him. He's going to do what it takes to protect that. We've seen that. He's going to continue to do that. And I think that's like, if there's a trait you want in your general manager, that's it. A guy who's going to do whatever he can to protect the team and the integrity of what he's building. I think he's doing just that.
I've taken a similar approach to protecting the culture in the locker room of team no yelling on the bus, 2-0 through 2 weeks of floor hockey. Huge come-from-behind victory last week, and bringing this up now, not to bore our fans, but because it will play a factor in another one of our podcast bets that we're going to be doing. For those of you who don't know, Joey and I are on the same team. He was my first overall pick, or second overall pick, but first round pick in the draft.
No. I was 1-1.
Were you 1-1?
Oh, I made a big deal.
Sorry.
I made a big deal about it when it happened. I was picked 1-1.
Right,
I made sure to flaunt that in front of the rest of the staff.
Thus, no yelling on the bus moniker. Fans that know this movie will, I hopefully, draw the connection to Billy Madison, Chris Farley's iconic character, his iconic cameo appearance in that movie. But so for this week's game, the player between Joey or I that scores the most goals in the game will have to do a bet, or have to do a punishment that will be named by you, the fans. So we would like for you to, on this tweet or on this Facebook post where the show comes out on, comment on it. And, I mean, if you want to tag Joey or I in it on Twitter, that's fine. But comment on it what you think our punishment should be. And for next week, we will select what punishment we do feel fits the crime of not scoring the most goals between the two of us. And then that will be the punishment for the following show. Yeah.
I think it's a good way to get people involved. We certainly aren't creative enough to come up with something on our own, so this is why we're asking for some help. But it'll be fun. I'm just gonna let it fly. I'm gonna score so many goals. I can't wait. We got to keep this going where Ben continues to lose bets. So I got to do everything I can to make sure. If that means I stand in front of a shot that Ben takes so I can knock it down and put it in myself, I might do that.
Jackie Moon-esque,
yeah.
block a shot.
Yeah, just
no corn dogs.
Nope, just do it. No corn dogs. No corn dogs. Yeah, just doing what I can to make sure we win. It's important to win. Like we said, we're 2-0. We've only got 4 weeks of staff floor hockey, so if we win this week, I think that seals us as the champions. But we could lose. Marquise is on the other team. He's thinking strategy right now. He's, turn your mic up.
Yep, he wants it.
Marquise has a comment. All right,
Okay.
what are we thinking from the opposing perspective?
So, my only thing here is the team is called Ridin the Bus, or the Don't Cry on the Bus.
Not
clearly
no yelling.
Whatever.
On the bus.
No yelling on the bus.
Get it
no
right.
Not our team.
Okay. No yelling on the bus. Clearly named after the podcast here. I'm a little bit disappointed that I was not picked in the first pick of the expansive draft by Ben here.
That's valid.
I'm gonna pass this one over to Ben.
I think if we were trying to keep the chemistry together, I think that might have thrown a wrench in some things here. So just know that behind the camera is a little bit disappointed in.
He's playing with a chip on his shoulder for the team.
I can say that there were workings of a potential trade deal, and you can vouch for this. That did have Marquise's name linked in it. They fell through.
So
unfortunately.
I'll tell you. I'll be. Let me take off my no yelling on the bus gear. Let me put on my commissioner's hat.
That's true.
As a league insider, there were talks about a potential trade of Brent Arnold being traded for Marquise. As Ben loved to say, you can't teach size, and Marquise has size. We needed that. And then we went to play the game, and we saw the hustle out of Brent. And that was just not that Marquise doesn't have the hustle, but Brent was like throwing his body around, throwing elbows.
He sent someone over the board.
Yeah,
he did.
Within the first 30 seconds of the game.
Was it Gordon?
Yeah,
Gordon that he pushed
captain
over?
of the other team. It was wild. So Ben's a little hesitant to give that up. I think he values that. Now, that doesn't mean that more trades cannot happen. I think there are some trades that need to be worked out. The other team's got to hold out.
Yeah.
So we got some things maybe in the works. I wouldn't rule it out. But, for now, what you hear here as we talk strategy, don't take that back to the other team.
The Captain Gordon?
Yeah, we don't need that.
Pierre LeBrun was tweeting about potential trade rumors in our league. So that's what we know so far.
It's got people on edge.
Yeah,
we've got our weekly wrap-ups, our weekly recaps, and that's only a couple weeks left.
That's true.
It's make or break time.
That's true.
Yeah, I think for me to be able to net one in my first ever time holding a hockey stick in competitive action, I was pretty proud of myself.
That's also another. We've got to keep that in mind too. Marquise is not a hockey player by nature, so these things all factor into trades and why teams make decisions, why captains, GMs make decisions of their team.
I can't not stand by my team right now at a 2-0 at 2-0 through 2 weeks. Even the last week got really hairy towards the end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we came back. We were down at 1.62. I think we were down 10-6. Like we raised a couple big time deficits to get that win. I mean, as you'll see in one of our I guess our next interview, we were sweating like grease monkeys.
That's true. Yeah, it was we were lathered up for our upcoming guest podcast interview, which
we're gonna tease.
We are gonna tease.
We tell you every week we're not gonna
only
tease
because
it.
it's already recorded.
We know it. We've got it. It's secured.
And you can go ahead because I know it came up in both interviews, being a Boston guy and Bill Guerin being a Boston guy in
Matt Boldy.
Yeah, so go ahead and talk because I know, especially with Bolds, we really got into the nitty gritty of Boston with him.
Yeah, and you like to kind of give me some grief for that. But I also like to give you grief for talking about Dakota Mermis and his short fuse. So
Love
it's
it.
like
I'll bring it up again. Can't wait to see it this year.
That's your thing, and talking Boston's my thing. I think for me the reason I like doing it so much is just because I'm not there, and it's home, right? It holds a special place in your heart. So anytime you can talk about that stuff with anybody, it's like if I get a chance to talk about UMass with Mitchell Chafee, like if you get the chance, take advantage and talk about it. Bolds was great. It was awesome chatting with him, really talking about his golf game. That was the thing that struck me the most is he's an incredible golfer and truly incredible. You saw his best score this year is a 65. I think his best score all time is a 62. If I come anywhere close to 87, I'm thrilled for myself.
Yeah, I'll never get anywhere near those numbers.
No, it's insane.
No.
And I'm sure he's not a guy who goes and he plays every single day. Like, to be able to golf at that level, you probably have to play close to every day or just be naturally gifted. And he seems like he's just good at everything he does, with the exception of basketball.
Guys. That's true. He did say basketball. So, yeah, look forward to that interview and that episode. Matt was great, as we knew he would be. And that'll be coming out next week for episode 8. And we're looking forward to episode 9, episode 10, episode 11. I mean, we're rolling along. We're
gonna keep
clicking
this
them
bus
off
moving.
here. This is
like
great.
Like Bill Guerin said, you're either on the bus or you're off. And we hope everybody's on.
It's a great call, and as fans probably noted at the beginning of the podcast with the new intro, we removed the honks in the bus and replaced it with that line. That's a great way to end it. His face after he said that, because he knew what he did.
Yeah.
And it was after he was talking very seriously about protecting the culture, and then he comes up with that line. It kind of looks at us, and I looked at you.
Yeah.
I thought
we thought
right
that was
away.
going to be the end, but we
Yeah.
also had a couple more questions we had to squeak out of him. But
You're either on the bus or you're not.
yeah,
Oh,
that was
so
a great.
good.
It's a great line. It was perfect.
It's perfect. It was perfect.
If only we couldn't have botched the moment, but it was good.
Typical for sure. But that's it for us, episode 7. A big thanks to Jeremy Core and Executive Podcast Solutions for making this listenership possible. Also to Marquise Jones for putting this all together. To Aaron Sickman for setting up the interview with Bill Guerin, and of course to Bill for his time. And to you, Joey Goldstein, any final thoughts?
Like, subscribe, review, give us 5 stars, share it. Do all that fun stuff. Make sure we get, we're trying to build this up, have it be something big, have it be something awesome. We can't do that without you guys' support. So keep that up, and we'll see you next week.
I've gotten a few good reviews since you've been starting to pump this at the end. So thanks for those of you who do review, who listen.
You thought I wrote it.
I did. Yeah.
You thought I wrote it.
I was like, who'd you pay to write this?
No, people actually like hearing us. So keep. You know what? If you're gonna leave a comment, talk about how great Ben's hair looks on a weekly basis. Just do that.
Or
mine.
Or I was gonna say how great Joey's hair looks on a weekly basis.
Or the shine that comes off my head. Whatever you want.
Especially after the bolt. Yeah, next week you'll really see the shine that comes out.
Yeah, talk about the shine.
Big thanks to all of you for listening and for watching. This has been episode 7 of Ridin the Bus, the official Iowa Wild podcast presented by Explore Minnesota. As always, 2 honks for the win. And thanks for listening.